What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more John Foxx. And we're returning for another bonus tune from the extra material related to his Metamatic album, 1980. Thank you again to Adrian. And the next track is Mr. No, and apparently this is the D side of No One Driving. I wonder if there's a direct connection, No One Driving, Mr. No. It feels like there's possibly some conceptual relationship. I do have to note that multiple tracks in this bonus material have been instrumental, and it's almost a possibility I'm welcoming here, because the idea of entitling an instrumental track Mr. No, no one singing on the track, Mr. No is the absence of a person rather than a person per se. That would be a clever title. Either way, given what I've heard among this bonus material, I expect it to be experimental and abstract, even if there are vocals / lyrics. But yes, I suppose my inclination is to hypothesize that there actually will be no lyrics and vocals, that it'll be another instrumental. But if there are vocals, I'll try to pick them up as I can. This is John Foxx, the tune is Mr. No, and apparently it's the D side to the No One Driving single. Whoa. Funky. Is that R2D2? Depth and drag of that one layer. What a tune. That's my favorite of these extra tunes so far, I think. Wow. It felt like a landscape piece on a futuristic, technologically advanced, but apocalyptic type of planet. One where there's impending disaster and perhaps the technology is collapsing, but there's digital wildlife or biomechanical wildlife about, and there's still a scope and an awe-inspiring nature to the skyline, to the horizon of the landscape, and so on. Definitely a very evocative piece that, again, had me thinking futuristic, sci-fi, but also cataclysmic. And I just loved the different elements. There was that sort of groovy, funky beat with that cyclical metallic riff, but then there was like this deeper, heavier bass line that came in and was riffing along maybe like halfway through the track. Then there were those big, dragging, heavier sweeps, which felt like they were at the bottom of the track sonically, but they were making me think of dark and, again, maybe electric clouds in the sky, portending some great collapse or calamity. So yes, and then of course that R2D2 sound that I joked, that sounded again like a digital bird or some biomechanical creature not found here on Earth, but perhaps doomed along with Mr. No and any other non-persons on this planet. So a really cool track. I love the soundscapes. It doesn't surprise me that he began making ambient, which I realize he did long before the Avenum album. That's the only one I have. But I remember poking around on Discogs a little while back, and apparently he's been making atmospheric ambient tunes at least going back to the 90s, and I would argue this, although I guess more formally instrumental synth pop, but definitely of an abstract and off the beaten path character, this is in a way a precursor of what I call Sybient, or not just I, but many people call Sybient, where it's psychedelic, there is percussion, down tempo often, though sometimes with a 4/4 beat, but where it's soundscape, it's atmospheric even as it has an ambient to it or an ambience to it. So yeah, this feels like ahead of its time and yet still very like Tron 80s, if you will. So very much of its time and yet forward looking simultaneously. I suppose when you can write a tune like that, especially without the aid of lyrics or vocals, you've done something right. And of course I'm now thinking, when I watched those Depeche Mode DVDs, it was Gareth Jones, I think, the producer for a couple of their albums. He was talking about how he was initially like, am I really going to work with these guys? These kind of young, teen, idol sort of synth pop guys. And it was John Foxx who said, hey man, this is a real opportunity for you. You know, get over to the studio, talk to this Daniel Miller guy, talk to the Depeche Mode kids, and, you know, see what you can do with them. And of course, as someone who loves their albums that came after the first couple, when they started to get a bit more industrial and dark and so on, I'm greatly thankful to Mr. Foxx for that as well. So yeah, shout out to Mr. Foxx for multiple reasons. Shout out to Adrian again for sharing this extra material. And again, I do have extra material available for the Garden album as well. I still have Avenum to finish going through. I'd love to get some of those earlier ambient albums, which, you know, again, we'll have to see how my budget can afford that. I'm always trying to, you know, be tight with my budget and, you know, on some level keep up with new techno records and so on, given that I'm a DJ and that's sort of how all this started in the first place. But as I said, I would love to go through some of his ambient material because that's very much of my interest for reasons outside already liking his music a lot. So in any case, we'll get to that when the time comes. Do let me know what you think of this, and I will see you then. Peace.